All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about module 4, lesson 3, which is slope of parallel and perpendicular lines. This benchmark is write a linear two-variable equation for a line that is parallel or perpendicular to a given line and goes straight through a given point. So the first part of understanding or being able to do this benchmark is to understand what slope is of parallel and perpendicular lines. So parallel in these notes, I'm going to highlight in orange. Perpendicular is going to be blue. And we first need to remember what slope is. So slope is the steepness of a line or your rate of change. And we've been talking about rate of change a lot in module 3, and we're going to continue to talk about it in module 4. So 2 points, to find the slope between 2 points, we're going to use the slope formula. Remember, slope is represented by the variable m, and that would be y2 minus y1 in our numerator, x2 minus x1 in our denominator. Now, to find a slope or the slope from our graph, remember we have to count our rise over our run. So if I have it as a fraction, remember my rise is in my numerator, how many I'm going up or down, divided by my run, how many I'm going from left to right. Now, finally, if I have an equation and I have to identify the slope, remember we first have to get the y by itself so that it's in slope-intercept form of y equals mx plus b. Once it's in slope-intercept form, we're looking for that coefficient of the x, that number in front of the x, and that is our slope, our m value. All right, so those are the ways to identify slope. Now let's see what they look like if we're talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. So we have parallel. Parallel lines are two lines that have the same slope, and they will never ever intersect. And what that would look like as an example in an equation form is y is equal to 3x minus 5 and y is equal to 3x plus 1. You see here we have the same slope, but different y-intercepts. So those lines would be parallel and they would never ever intersect. Okay, then we have perpendicular lines. And perpendicular lines are lines that intersect and make a 90-degree angle. It must be a 90-degree angle. If it is not 90 degrees, then you do not have perpendicular lines. And perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocals for slope. So what that means is that if it's positive, it becomes negative. And what a reciprocal means would be if it's 2/3, it would be 3/2. So your fraction is flipping, okay? And we can look to identify if this is an opposite reciprocal, because when we multiply these slopes together, they would become -1. So what that looks like in an equation is y is equal to 2/3 x plus 7, and y is equal to -3/2 x plus 2. See here how this is positive and now it's negative? This is 2/3 and now it's 3/2. Those are reciprocals. Okay, when I multiply -3/2 times 2/3, I get -6 divided by 6, which is -1. All right, so let's do some examples. We need to identify these lines as parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Because remember, lines can be neither parallel or perpendicular. And we have y is equal to 1/4 x plus 3, and we have y is equal to -4x minus 2. So when I multiply 1/4 times -4/1, because remember, -4 is the same as having -4/1, that is equal to -4 divided by 4, which is -1. So those two lines would be perpendicular. They created a 90-degree angle where they intersected. Then we have y is equal to -3x plus 3, and y is equal to 3x minus 2. These two do have opposite slopes, meaning one is negative and one is positive, but 3 and 3 are not reciprocals. So they are not equal and they are not reciprocals, so they are neither parallel or perpendicular. Finally, we have y is equal to 2/3 x plus 1, and y is equal to -2/3. Again, we have opposite, so 2/3 and -2/3, But this would have to be negative 3/2 if it was going to be the reciprocal. So again, this is neither. They are not parallel and they are not perpendicular. Okay, so you're going to have to be able to do that in your practice today. So let's see what your practice is going to look like. So we need to find the slope of the lines, then determine if they are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So to find the slope between 2 points, we learned that in Module 3, Lesson 2, we're going to use our slope formula. So we're going to take our y2 minus our y1 and divide that by our x2 divided by our x1. So 4 minus 1 is going to be 3. And then 3 minus a negative 3 is 6. Because remember, whenever we subtract a negative, we're really adding. So it becomes 6. So 3 over 6 can be simplified to 1/2. And now we need to find the slope of line B that contains the points -4, -3, and 4, 1. So again, we're going to do y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So 1 minus a negative 3, so that'll be 1 plus 3, which is 4. And 4 minus a negative 4, 4 plus 4, which will be 8. So we have 4 over 8, which again is 1/2. So because 1/2 is equal to 1/2, we know that the slope of these lines are the same, so these lines will be parallel. Next, we need to solve for y. So we have line C, which is negative x plus 4y is equal to negative 12. And we have line D, 2x plus 8y is equal to 16. So we have to be able to rearrange these formulas or use our literal equation skills from Module 1, Lesson 5, to see if we can solve for y. So the first thing we're going to do to get this y by itself is to add x to both sides so that it goes across the equal sign. When I add x to both sides, I get 4y is equal to x minus 12. I divide by 4. 4 divided by 4 will become 1. X divided by 4 will be 1/4 x, and negative 12 divided by 4 will be negative 3. So now I've rewritten this equation in slope-intercept form, and I can find my slope. Now I have to do the same thing here. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides, and then I get 8y is equal to negative 2x plus 16, and then I have to divide all of the terms by 8 because that's the coefficient of my y. And when I divide by 8, I get y is equal to negative 1/4 x plus 2. So you see here that I do not have opposite reciprocal slopes. I have 1/4 and I have negative 1/4, so they are opposites, but they are not reciprocals, so this would be neither. All right, finally, when we're given two graphs. So if I'm given graph A and graph B, are these two lines parallel or perpendicular? In order to figure that out, I have to identify the slope by counting the rise over the run for both equations, for both lines, and then see if they are opposite reciprocals or the same. So from this point to this point, how did I move? Well, I went down 1, 2, 3. So my rise is negative 3, and I went over 1, so a positive 1. So my slope is a negative 3. Negative 3 over 1 simplifies to be negative 3. Here, from this point to this point, I went up 1, so positive 1. And I went to the right 2, so that's a positive 2. So my slope here would be 1/2. Well, negative 3 and 1/2, they are not opposite reciprocals, and they are not the same, so that would be neither. All right, that is it for our notes. Now go and try the 5 practice problems in Canvas and submit your answers to see if you have it right. You only have 3 attempts. Thanks. Have a good day.